That would
Lost
progress
reindeer
quickly.
that got lost the reindeer that took off in the.
Oh,
Right.
dude,
Yeah.
our thing took off one night during the wind. We had a big blow up cat thing. It was like 4 feet and it just, we watched it. And it just was gone and we never found it. We went looking the next day. It was gone.
That's why.
Yeah, at night, one
Why I
night,
left
just,
there,
wow.
cut of everything.
Where I'm at on that hill, we get a good wind going through there, especially when you have wind going. Just on a regular day, it's windy up there, but wow, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
pretty windy at night.
Was really glad I hadn't put my lights up outside yet.
Oh, yeah, no. My wife says the next one's gonna be heavier. That way it can't blow away. All right.
I would have to.
Perfect. Gotta be grateful. Wine angle live, so they can't live again.
Good evening, the study session, December 9th, is called to order. Mary, you do a roll call, please.
I will. Councilmember Bush,
Here.
Councilmember Stearns,
Here.
Councilmember Gilmore.
Here.
Mayor Lisbon.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Sherman.
Here.
Councilmember Sapp,
Here.
Councilmember Gutierrez.
Here. Thank you, Mary. Tonight, we have City Manager Mark Ziegler with Interim Community and Economic Development Director Jason Dose is here to share information with us about our animal shelter and animal control. Jump in.
Thank you. Well, I have to move on. You guys can see it. I can't. There it is. Get to a slideshow. So we have full slides for you this evening. All right. Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council. This kind of follows from, boy, all the way back to May when we had the service level discussion, some priorities with the, remember that dot exercise. As well as, you know, as we move through the development of the 2026 budget and ongoing service level discussions, animal control and shelter operations are one that frankly, we have kind of, I mean, for lack of better terms, struggled with over time, whether it's the actual service that we provide, the budgetary constraints that we have, how to meet council's expectations, community expectations, what policy decisions surrounding these types of services, filling staffing positions, particularly animal control officer as well. So we're gonna kind of touch bases on animal shelter, animal control a little bit separately because they're kind of distinct functions, but one, right, can't happen without the other, right? So if you have animal control services, you need a shelter, right? But you can have a shelter without animal control service. It's just not a robust animal control program within the city. So we'll talk about those a little bit separately, but at the end of the day, they really are truly connected. Not only in the budget, but also functionally with the staff and the functions that are provided within that department. And you'll see that this kind of carries over to other services that are provided within the city, like code enforcement, PD as well at the same time.
Yeah, I'd add
Please.
that the function of the shelter and animal control, I mean, who are we kidding? It's expected. I mean, that's what people expect. They don't, you know, right now, we're partially staffed. We have shelter technicians, part-time staff and one full-time, but we don't have an animal control officer. So that's left primarily to the police department to respond to calls, you know? We don't have dedicated staff. If there were like a cruelty to animals type case, I don't even know where that would fall. Maybe the detectives with it.
PD, correct?
Yeah.
So a little bit about the facility itself, 902 West Pine near the city shop, 8 regular kennels, 4 quarantine kennels. There's a small concrete yard to the side. The rear dirt and gravel yard has now been cleared from police evidence. So the vehicles and the container out of there, to provide more space, but it's not fully contained or capable of really maintaining animals out there, without some sort of level of supervision. Yeah, we did recently replace the roof and this year replaced the HVAC unit to make it much more comfortable and maintain the viability of the structure, but there's still a number of things interior wise, that some paint, some upgrades the kennel. The kennels are old, don't function appropriately as far as like guillotine doors where you can separate dogs, where you don't have to enter into the kennel yourself and put yourself or staff in danger, particularly if they're a dog that's susceptible to going after you or going after another dog too. You can separate those. There's some fence repairs that need to be done in the back, just to make it more secure. Floor drains don't always drain well, a little bit of a maintenance issue, but they crop up every once in a while where you have to go out and jet them up and take care of them. There's some security issues down there. It gets dark. We don't have security cameras. There is some lighting, but certainly it's a little dark down there in the evening hours. We don't have an adequate vehicle at this point. We've moved some things around with an SUV with a cage or without a cage, and right now it's got kennels fastened in the back, and it's a hand-me-down, pass-me-down vehicle from the police department. Maintaining a washer and dryer long-term, especially a residential washer and dryer in that environment, doesn't work very well. And you're limited in space and whether you can get a large commercial appliance in there at all. So staffing, we are budgeted for the animal control officer. As you know, the animal control officer left. And we've now staffed it with a lead shelter technician, so we can provide that 8 hour a day care for the animals, do any intakes, adoptions and things like that. And then there is 4 part-time animal shelter technicians that'll work evenings and weekends, sometimes mornings, depending on if an animal has to be transferred to a vet appointment or something like that. When you're full of animals and you're at 11, 12 in there, it's a lot of work because a lot of times you're moving one animal out at a time, cleaning kennels. It's exercising a bit, moving it back in, feeding it, and moving through that process with each animal. Sir Jason?
For me, it's been quite a learning experience, and I've worked for the city for 20 years, but it's only in the last 3 months that, I with a lot of help from Mark's side of things, because he was the community development director for quite some time, I'm trying to get a handle on the animal control shelter rather aspect. And what I was struck by going in there, because Tia, our lead tech, she's great. She's very passionate about the animals. She for lack of a better term, cares for them like they're her own. You have to like talk her down sometimes. About, well, we just need to care for these animals. But the site is really, even to me, coming into it with new eyes, it's very dated. It's very constrained in size. I think when we built it in 95, I think it was commissioned. It was just like one of those get it done sort of things. I don't think anybody really thought about the city growing and expanding. The washroom in particular is probably the size of most people's closets, right? So you have a washer dryer in one corner. We have a residential tub that's kind of up on a pedestal that kind of concerned me. One of the things Mark didn't mention is what I would like to see longer term as we move forward is more of I've seen like the dog friendly tubs that you can like walk dogs in, you're not having to lift, and the floor in there can get clammy sometimes, if it's wet. And I just worry about the techs lifting dogs, and it just seems to me like we're asking for liability with these things. And same thing with the vehicle. The vehicle we just retrofit was replacing another vehicle we had just retrofit a few years ago that we got as a hand-me-down. But I don't see that as a long-term solution. This vehicle came out of code enforcement, and the reason it came out of code enforcement is for a reason. That we needed a more reliable vehicle for code enforcement. So this is the best we've got. So just the point being, I think we've gotten by in past years, but on a moving forward basis, we're probably gonna have to think about putting some more money into it to lower liability, increased service, that sort of thing as we grow.
I just realized I have a spelling error in expenditures, but, so you'll see the basically 3-year budgetary figures for animal control and shelter operations. Back in 23, at 87, and it's increased pretty significantly there. Back in 23, there was a combination of code enforcement and animal control so it was a half-time animal control officer and their half-time code enforcement, there's a full-time code enforcement officer. So there's 2 positions that kind of shared those duties at that point. So that's why you'll see, part of the reason why you'll see 2023 expenditures be lower than moving forward. Underneath that revenue that we've seen from the across the line there is the total, but impound fees for people that are surrendering animals, adoption fees, animals that go out, any donations, and then licensing fees, as you see as well. We in 2024 with an animal control officer, certainly the revenue was up because we had more robust licensing, more contact with individuals, stray dogs, dogs at large, and things like that, and get them licensed, but also more active and robust adoption program. Below that, you'll see some of the stats that we have. One thing that we were fairly surprised about were the calls for service through MACECOM. You'll see year to date in 2025, 386 calls through MACECOM for animal services. But it's really trending that way over the last 4 years, as you'll see, back to 2022, 396 calls. So there's a
We also had 42 more on My Civic.
correct in 25, so 42 more coming through my civic, and these could be anything from barking dogs, dogs at large, strays, could be injured dogs or something like that.
So the calls for service are still rising.
And I think that's what we've seen, over time, particularly when we got out of COVID pandemic, and
Yeah.
shelters became quite full across the country, really. And we saw that here as well, and more calls for service, more animals within our shelters. 2023, 22 and 23, 71 animal complaints were investigated. During 2024, when we had our animal control officer in place from May through August, there were 74 animal complaints investigated. Nothing by our animal control staff. We have had a couple incidents where our PD has responded to these. Usually in those, they've been, I'll say the individuals owning the animals have complied with whatever was needed at that point, whether it's securing the dog or taking care of removing it from the premises or whatever that occurred.
When I did ride-alongs with the PD, I was surprised how many calls were without dog. It takes up a lot of their time. I was really surprised with that.
And certainly those will be prioritized under calls, especially if it's stray or dog at large or things like that, when it's something that is more significant to health and safety of the public. So PD's making that call at the time those calls come in. So we have Shelton Municipal Code 7.04 addresses pet animals. There's a number of code sections that apply from licensing, removal of tags, maximum number of dogs or cats allowed. Licensing still requires a license for cats in the city of Shelton, as well as dogs.
I did not realize that.
We took that
I
off
took that off.
in 2022.
We took that off.
Took that off. It should have came out.
We'll check the ordinance. There is an ordinance 1983-0122 from 2022.
Yeah, it's still in the first part. All
Okay.
dogs and cats kept in the city over 6 months of age shall.
We said yes to dogs and no to cats because it was a big deal.
Oh, remember some of that discussion.
Oh, and yes to 6 chickens. That was in there too.
I
So
I remember conversations about chickens. Yeah. I didn't realize.
And when we talk about policy decisions, one thing that we'll discuss a little bit here is frankly, you know, how long you maintain dogs in the shelter, what you do with them, you know, what kind of services are being provided to these animals, because that certainly dictates how much is being spent within the budget, from veterinary bills to long-term care to the staffing. As these numbers increase, the numbers are high, the shelter's full, takes more staff to maintain these animals and hopefully get them into adoption, right? But the longer they're in these kennels, the less they're viable for certain adoption. Here's the numbers that we have available to us at the time. Total sheltered animals in 2023 at 88, 24 at 47, and year-to-date in 25 at 74. You'll see how many are strays and surrenders, impounds, and then the associated adoptions. We just don't have very good data from previous couple of years. Average stay, we do have in 25 at 48 days. The average stay in 24 was 15. I think you'll see that was due to having an animal control officer that was more proactive in the adoption process. And then the longest stay as of this year, we've got 2 dogs in there that it's now 361 days. So that was as of 12/2. So obviously not the best case scenario particularly for those 2 animals. So that leads us to kind of those discussion points that I led off with, you know, where are our priorities for animal shelter and animal care? What's our community expectations? Falls within the service levels, you know, because you can address, you know, certainly strays, surrenders, people that bring the dogs by and surrender them. At this point, most dogs that come to the shelter for surrender we're taking in, whether they're county residents or not, because the implication is that dog might just be left in the city of Shelton. Right? And then it becomes an enforcement issue for potentially PD, a call for service or things like that. Impounds if needed. So if the animal's in danger, it's being mistreated, something like that. Those are impounds, obviously dangerous animals. We have non-domestic animals, you know. We allow chickens in the city of Shelton on lots in the neighborhood residential zone of an acre or more. You're allowed certain other non-domestic animals, like a pig potentially, as long as you meet certain requirements, or a horse, yeah. Then there's, you know, investigations and the license enforcement. There's not a proactive licensing program currently within our services. Obviously, budgetary decisions drive all of this, and then policy decisions in the Shelton Municipal Code, as I mentioned, and didn't go through these fully, but you know, there's requirements within Shelton Municipal Code on how we administer animal control, how we deal with injured and diseased animals, nuisance dogs, dogs at large, from, you know, licensing and impounding and all of those things. What's the liability of the city of Shelton right now, particularly when you don't have an animal control officer? We don't have police officers trained in animal control. It's not part of the police academy. And so there's a certain amount of liability when you're dealing with these animals. And frankly, we don't have a robust training program within the shelter operations ourselves. So it's just not something that city of Shelton has engaged in the past, and developed a robust training program to make sure our shelter techs are up to speed as well. Maintain the animals in veterinary care, you know, it's inevitable. They need care, just like anybody else. They need to be fed, they need to be exercised, they need to be socialized, they need to be walked. And then the veterinary care that goes along with that, the spaying and neutering, is something we always do. So we don't perpetuate some of these issues, and pass those on to somebody that's going to do that later. Licensing, maintaining, you know, a robust licensing program, so get dogs back to the owners when they're strays, but also putting some responsibility on the owners that may be maintaining animals in the city of Shelton, and then how how you develop a robust adoption program, that goes with potentially, you know, advertising the dogs, site visits, you know, everything else that goes along with that, and then receiving the money, right, taking the money and the paperwork that goes along with it, we're still a governmental entity, we still create a lot of papers, right? And particularly when it's dealing with an adoption of an animal and transferring that animal and then receiving funds and maintaining the proper protocols for receiving of public funds at that point. Certainly, there's other agencies in our area, as we've seen with Joint Animal Services in Thurston County. They partner with Thurston County, Tumwater, Olympia, Lacey, Bakota, Yelm, and other entities like that. We don't have that robust of a program here. Mason County's, I know, kicked around Animal Services, and I believe they're entering into an agreement with Joint Animal Services at some point, at least from some of their commission meetings. We previously had a contract with Kitsap Humane for transferring of dogs to their care, and that they discontinued that contract. Adopt-a-Pet was another one that we had a contract with to transfer animals to their care as well. That contract was discontinued as well. My understanding is capacity issues and whether they're able to maintain, you know, the service that they're providing, in addition to what would come from the city of Shelton. We were paying them for that service and that transfer. But we do have a period of time, we have to maintain the dog in our shelter. So if it's a stray or an impound or anything like that, we're maintaining that animal for a certain number of days. Per our code, it's 3 days before that animal will be transferred. And then Mason County Humane Society, certainly our local humane society that's offering services that we utilize, thankfully, for veterinary services, because it saves us a bit of money at a reduced rate, especially the spay and neuters. That is able to provide services here, and frankly, we can talk about that further on what we've been talking about over the last several months. So this kind of opens it up to this discussion point, if you will.
Sorry, ask a question.
We talked before about the county having responsibility or some legal responsibility. Is that's not true?
No, they're not required by the service county.
Where are we at with negotiating with other entities to take over control services?
We can enter into that discussion after this, if you like. We've got representatives from Mason County Humane Society here. We've had some productive conversations about the services they could provide. We certainly, you know, there's no agreement, obviously, because I don't have direction from council. My hope is tonight we have some type of direction on where the council would like to go, so we can bring back further information at a later council meeting.
So currently, most of the actions that have to be taken are being taken on by the police department, and they're not fully trained in doing that. Is that correct?
There's nobody in the city of Shelton that's fully trained in animal control services, correct?
And it's
I'd say it's police and code enforcement.
Yeah.
police and code enforcement. So how much time is the code enforcement and the police using for animal calls? It's like one a day, it looks like.
Yeah, our code enforcement officers telling us it's probably about 4 hours a week in general that they're out helping out with animal services. So it's just another body, you know, to be out there if it's a stray or if it's somebody else at the shelter and they're alone. Maybe they had to the lead shelter tech had to go to a vet appointment or something like that. It's somebody else to backfill. Meet somebody for an adoption, handle a call if somebody's in, you know, bringing a dog in for surrender or anything like that.
And at $250,000 a year, it's not something we can have a bake sale to make up the cost and volunteer in the community. It's something that we really have to invest money to make sure that we don't have a bunch of stray or dangerous animals around. I mean, we think we're lucky in this country. There are some other countries that don't have animal control, and they're packing up at night and attacking people, but here in America, that's not happening so often. But anyway, I'm just I'm just curious about what's the worst that can happen, and a lot of bad things could happen if we don't have some level of service.
I'd probably like to see some of the options that are out there before we make a decision on direction. You said that they're here to, they have some information for us.
Yeah, we can talk a little bit more about,
I mean,
You know,
I'd like to hear that
I
before
mean,
we were to.
well, okay, but let's talk about priorities and expectations of the council, right? If it's maintaining a robust animal control service and animal shelter services, I guess we can go, down two different routes, right? City maintain that service with the needed investments, or we look for an outside agency. If the councils would at all consider reducing that level of service, then that's a separate discussion. There's certainly costs involved with providing the service. We're seeing increased calls for service. We're gonna see a population bump with density in the city of Shelton before long, right? We're building houses. Somebody's building houses. We're facilitating that and permitting that on 4,500 square foot lots. That's a lot different than what it looks today on 6,000 square foot lots. As those houses get built closer together, there's more calls for service, and it's across the board. It's not just animal control, but if we're talking about animal control tonight, it's stray dogs, it's barking dogs, things like that, because people are living closer together. As these more urban developments interface with what could be more rural development, if you will, or properties that are abutting rural undeveloped properties, and maybe they're enjoying the luxury of vacant property to run their dog, or their dog barks a lot and they don't have a neighbor right now, or they have more than the allowed number of chickens. Those calls will increase as that development occurs around them. My expectation is that our calls for service will increase as our population increases and as we densify.
I mean, stray dogs getting non-domestic animals like chickens is a big problem in the county and also in the city. And we are growing, but if we looked at the Adopt-A-Pet, their shelter is an inside-outside dual purpose, and what we have is like a prison where everyone's all inside. We're gonna have to upgrade what we do have if we're gonna continue services, and we might have to not just have a $250,000 budget, we might have to have substantially more. We might even need a capital program if we continue animal control services in the city. And we're the only game in town because the county doesn't do it. So we're kind of in a rough place here.
Yeah, and to me, the lack of networking ability right now, what I mean by that is, getting dogs out for adoption quickly. That's the biggest struggle to me, because that's a very small shelter. It's tight quarters. And I mean, the way you put it, it's like a prison. It kind of is. It wasn't, I don't think it was built thinking animals would live there long term.
Right.
And we have a couple of animals that have unfortunately been there almost a year.
I think that what we need
big
to start looking at is moving forward. Like you said, we're gonna have more people, we're gonna have more dogs, we're gonna have more calls for service. Calls for service don't come into the city, they come into the 911, they come into the non-emergency number. So I think what we need to begin is we need to start looking at moving animal control and code enforcement back to the police department. And then we need to look into, with the Criminal Justice Training Center, what animal control training is available that we can get for, like, we're getting new officers. We just budgeted for a new officer. That's something we could look into getting them trained for, because if we have to move forward and we're going to look at a population increase, and this is a program that's going to need to grow over time. So that's just my opinion.
I mean, I think we've struggled for years with animal control, one way or another, whether it be staffing, the building, the upgrades, somebody out on the street, investigations. I mean, maybe it's time that we look at other options. I mean, we've struggled. I mean, I've been here 8 years, and I think we've struggled every year with animal control one way or another. So maybe it's time to look outside, look at other options.
I agree.
I'm sorry to burst your bubble a little bit, but one of our officers is leaving after the first of the year. And that, talking to Chief Kosted, that's part of the issues here. We haven't had this sustainable workforce in PD. Yes, we're adding a patrol position. We've got somebody at the academy now. We'll lose somebody, one of our officers early next year, that's moving on to another agency. And so maintaining that service and then prioritizing animal control within the police department when they've got a lot of expectations, and I put it here, community expectations within our community. Are they able to adequately provide the service that the council believes is appropriate for animal control?
Be worried if we had an officer who's trained on, like, it's a solid idea, but my concern is that if we had an officer who's trained to handle animals, all of a sudden their job is dog duty. Because we get so many of those calls, and that's somebody who might just be heading right out the door. We see so many people move on to other places, there's a lot of places for officers to go. That might not be the job that an officer wants. Obviously, we're having a hard time having somebody, I think it's. The police is a natural place for it, in a way, and it's a service we need to have. I'd love to get our shelter contracted out. Because. Like was pointed out, we don't have the capacity to really serve the community and get these dogs out the door. We don't have enough staffing to do it. We don't have enough time to be out on Facebook and be like, hey, look at all these animals we have, and you can meet us during 3 hours a day that we're available to actually staff that, whatever that challenge is. So, but I don't know that we could not provide some sort of animal control service, whether it's through PD or elsewhere, but I do have concerns about PD, just being that it sounds like probably not what they want to do it in time for.
Well, we can also put it back into code enforcement and re-budget code enforcement and make that part of investing in our community. Putting animal control back into code enforcement. And then it's be easier to recruit somebody for an animal control position than a police department position. In my head anyway, more people are gonna sign up trying to be an animal control technician or animal control person than going through academy and going to be a police person. So if we could be robustly doing code enforcement along with animal control, that might be a way to put it into the budget. Because PD frankly is gonna be safe with budgeting, but if we want to really grow as a city, code enforcement should be a priority. So, and public safety should also be part of that in the code enforcement. So I think if we did want to budget something, we should put it into code enforcement and not necessarily police department. But it's a good idea to put it there because it's always, the funding's always going to be safe from PD because no one on this council is going to cut the budget on the police. But if we really want to think about long-term sustainability and growth, we need to put it into code enforcement and think about that.
I'd be interested in entertaining either that idea or George Bush's idea. My biggest concern is that when you contract out, sometimes you pay more for what you would get when you're in-house. And with our budget the way it is, I'm just concerned about the numbers if we contract out. So I'm interested in a cost comparison between the other agencies and what it would, how that compares to if we were to put it into code enforcement.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
Yeah.
And we could contract out temporarily until we have a more robust animal control idea of what we're gonna do and where we're gonna put it, whether it be PD or code enforcement.
I mean, we know what it's costing us.
You know, it's costing us
So
now.
we know what we're going, we're increasing every year. We're at 250 now,
258 is our projected.
258 right now. So I
2025
mean, if
expenditure.
we were, we know what we're paying. So if we go out and look for.
But that's with one funded, unfilled code enforcement position,
Right.
correct?
Well, the lead shelter tech is in place of the animal control officer. So there is a full FTE. It's a little lower pay than what the animal control officer would be. We had to fill a full-time position, a full FTE to manage the shelter, which the animal control officer would do, right? Normally if they were hired. So we have the lead shelter tech that is backfilling the animal control officer. If we went out and hired an animal control officer, we wouldn't need that lead shelter tech necessarily. But again, the animal control officer is not available for animal control at all times because they are also the manager of the shelter with a couple part-time people. It doesn't, in fact, it gets probably a little more expensive with the animal control officer because it's a higher pay. It's a more competitive market.
Could we work with the animal control tech and see if she wants to become a code enforcement officer?
We had the animal control officer position open when she applied and we had it open for several months. and didn't have viable candidates.
So she wasn't a viable candidate.
Didn't apply.
Oh, okay. All right,
Yeah, no,
Okay. Cool, I was like, what? Okay, no, that makes sense. So then maybe that's a conversation that needs to take place, because, you know,
I think we're.
she's pretty
waiting
passionate.
For Melissa's direction that she wants to go.
No, I agree. I think we need to see a kind of a cost comparison of what we're looking at with contracting outside agencies. And
Okay.
if there's talk of wanting to do that temporarily, what are we looking at for what's length of contracts typically and
I think temporarily doesn't serve our purpose really, because you're asking the agency
Yeah.
to ramp up to provide this service and then ramp down potentially at a later
Yeah.
date. And then the city to work through that as well, to ramp up at some date that might be indeterminate unless you put a number on it, but it,
So
Frankly,
well, that makes
Yes,
sense.
let's
I
just
didn't
come back.
frankly, if
said
I'm
that,
hiring,
but
frankly, if
yeah,
I'm hiring,
comment,
if I'm
but made
applying
me
for a
think,
job,
well,
I don't want an end date on that job.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I wanna dictate that myself.
Yeah.
If I
so we'll
can,
just
so.
go as we are,
yeah,
come back with the comparison.
So let's talk about, if you don't mind, Catherine Johnson from Humane Societies here tonight. She's got some more information. We can have, you know, we can get down to brass tacks here, if you will, a little bit tonight with what we've talked about. Jason and myself have talked a lot with Catherine over the last several months, certainly. Because they are the entity that's coming to the table and offering some services in the city of Shelton. Nobody else is at this point. Particularly when you talk about robust animal shelter services and animal control services. And this is an entity that maintains a professional staff. They have veterinarians on staff. They have the ability to do some licensing programs, adoption, full robust adoptions. They have fostering program in place as well. So we can jump right into that if that's something council's interested. Catherine, do you wanna come up to the hot seat? Yeah, come on up. Thanks. Let me find and share here.
Hello, everyone.
I don't know if you know Catherine Johnson, the executive director from Mason County. Humane Society. Yeah.
Location and welfare. So I created a little briefing packet just to kind of go over a basic proposal. While I completely understand that your guys' jobs to make sure that the city stays within the budget. I did create a pretty robust packet to just show that we aren't comparing apples to apples. Services that we are currently providing and that we can provide are a bit more robust just based on the level of programming that we already have in place, the community partnerships that we have, and the expertise that we have in this very specific sector of animal welfare. So I'm not gonna read the entire thing verbatim, but I do want to start off by reading this first part just because I do think it's pretty impactful for who we are as an organization. So the Humane Society of Mason County is a local nonprofit animal welfare organization serving Mason County for more than 40 years. We operate a low-cost spay and neuter clinic and a community-based foster and adoption program serving over 5,000 animals annually. We are the only fully staffed animal sheltering organization in the county with veterinary capabilities. Our team includes licensed veterinary staff, experienced animal care personnel, and a dedicated foster and adoptions team, along with leadership trained in shelter operations and population management. We have the experience to respond to cruelty and hoarding cases, partner with first responders during emergencies, and support social services and families. This critical work keeps our community healthy and safe. Our mission is simple: to provide compassionate, effective, and community-centered animal services that support both animals and the people who love them. And that's really an important piece of this package as we talk about both ends of the leash, you know, servicing animals and humans is an important part of not only making sure that we are fixing problems and not just long-term solutions instead of band-aids, but also, making sure that it stays community centered and really offers the community, the support rather than just enforcement. When we talk about animal control, it's a typical word that comes up a lot is enforcement piece of it. But that's not how you win over everyone, it's just by only coming to their door when there's an enforcement issue in place. That needs to be addressed. So. The city, why the city needs a partnership, modern sheltering is different. Like Jason spoke about, how the shelter was designed is how sheltering looked. 30 years ago, when the shelter was built, that is what sheltering looked like. Animals were not designed to stay there long term. It was not meant to be somewhere engaging and community oriented for the community to come feel welcome, to look and adopt a potential family member. It very much had some pretty grim services that it provided and very limited. Population was a lot smaller back then. And the standards for animal care weren't as clearly identified as they are these days. We do have so many more documents at our disposal, things like the ASB guidelines, animal sheltering, veterinarian guidelines that say things like the minimum amount of time that a dog should be spending in a kennel and the size of the kennel and how often the animal is fed and how long of a length of stay before you should start looking at transfer options or fostering options or getting the dog in some kind of training program. So there's a lot more things now that are more clearly outlined that can set us our guidelines and that is where this is kind of taking us is nationwide and locally also. We are seeing trends that are adding to this pressure. Shelter intake is increasing all over the United States. As veterinary costs are rising, veterinary costs for veterinary appointments are more limited. Economic and housing instability, which I know something you guys talk about a lot, leads to more animals needing to find other homes when the humans no longer have adequate housing. So partnering with us helps you get access to the team that we already have, the staff that we already have very dedicated and experienced in this field. And the programming that we have in place, as well as our medical staff and our foster adoption network. We have a lot of followings on in our marketing materials, people visiting our website, our high volume spay neuter clinic services around 5,000 families annually. Around 4,000 animals annually or families annually. And that is a huge network of people who know about HSMC, want to engage with HSMC in volunteering and adoptions, fostering adoptions. And of course, the ability to provide consistent, humane, and legally compliant animal services without expanding your guys' internal workforce. Because as we know, the employee turnover is expensive and retraining is it's just difficult.
I think one thing to add, the administrative work, we've seen this bounce around from PD to community development a couple times. And the administrative work that goes into just managing this service, which frankly is fairly small for the city of Shelton for what we're doing right now, but it's labor intensive if you're managing it correctly. And we could do a better job there. But the priorities for Jason right now are subdivisions and permitting and code enforcement, and the priorities for PD are public safety. And yeah, exactly right. So those are the concerns that I have. And when you don't have an administrative staff that's reduced over the last 6 months, being able to ensure that the staff that are providing the services are being fully supported at the same time.
So what we are offering to basically take everything off of your plates for a full contract. This helps us when we are managing all intake and outcomes. It helps us make sure that we can ensure that the animals that we're bringing into care, we can adequately match them with families moving outside or foster homes or whatever other needs that they might have. The daily shelter operations, so safe, humane housing and daily care obviously is number one priority. That is a bare minimum, making sure the animals are fed twice daily. And the staff is always there to monitor, make sure if there's any signs of illness, sickness, any behavior concerns, any animals that are not doing so well, need more time out, need outside of the kennel, need to be placed in a foster home. Those things are happening. Medical, it's what we specialize in. We have, as Mark said, we have veterinarians on staff, we have veterinary professionals, vet assistants, vet techs. We can make sure that we have access to the prescription medications, prescription strength flea prevention, parasite prevention, any of those things, we have those things in stock. So we are able to make sure that the animals are receiving anything that they need immediately on intake. We have a pretty, we have a strict intake protocol with making sure that all of these things are covered immediately when the animal enters our care. And those are all compliant with the ASB guidelines that I spoke about. Our medical care, or in spay neuter surgeries. Timely spay neuter surgeries is another big piece. Sometimes we are seeing animals that could be placed available for adoption online, start being marketed and published on social media, website, or even just have that kennel card on their kennel say available for adoption. They're waiting to have that status flipped because they're waiting on their spay neuter appointment. Because we manage all of that internally, we're able to really quickly make sure that we have a no-show public client. We slip in a shelter animal, we do that every day to make sure that those animals are prioritized to get spayed and neutered as quickly as possible. So they can find their forever family as quickly as possible. On-site rapid access to medical care, because we have our veterinarians on staff, they're just a text away, a photo away. Again, something that we are quite well versed in, making sure that we at least have access to medical knowledge as quickly as possible, or medical hands if needed. Enrichment and volunteer dog walking program. Some of these things, so added enrichment being that toys, making sure that we are out there asking for donations of these things or purchasing these things, having volunteers make these things. Programs like volunteer dog walking program or doggy field trips, overnight trips, things like that. All of those programs are something that takes program staffing. These programs don't just create themselves and manage themselves. So we have some of these programs already in place. They just need to be modified or changed to be able to meet this location's needs. But also some of them do need to be implemented or created from the ground up. That takes time, takes a lot of staff time to make sure that these programs are being managed appropriately. and consistently. And these do provide great opportunities for the city of Shelton residents as well. Behavioral support, we have a trainer that we work with quite routinely for those types of things, again, other program sports. Adoption and transfer coordination, we do a lot of this, close partners with organizations far and wide, to manage transfers when we have, more animals in care than then we can get adopted out quickly. And then, again, our foster placement, currently, we are primarily foster based. And so we have a foster team, staff that manages onboarding, training, all of the legal, forms that our fosters need to sign, and maintaining the daily, weekly communications with those fosters, scheduling those fosters for booster vaccine appointments, all of those pieces and parts that go into the foster program, something that HSMC already has established. Animal control services. We would like to offer to provide that animal control officer position. Why we think it is really important to keep that position really tightly with the shelter and not in a other agency, like PD or code enforcement, is again to make sure that we have, that officer has the tools necessary to then treat both sides of the leash. A lot of these bullet points you see up here are the minimums, are the standards that we will make sure that we are meeting, that are required by law. They're required by our ordinances and required by public safety. These quarantines, those are state RCWs for bite quarantines. Cruelty and neglect investigations, obviously that would be working very closely with our PD to make sure that any state or felony level investigations are being handled appropriately with our medical staff to help really seal the deal on anything that needs a veterinarian's notes or sign off.
You're doing the investigations?
Huh?
You're doing the investigations?
So most of the investigations do need to be handled by like a detective or a commissioned officer. If they are felony level, so there's some
Yeah.
legalities in there that.
It could be a supporting role. We have in the past with animal neglect or something like that. The previous animal control officer would do most of the work, if you will, and then turn that over to an officer for citation or whatever the appropriate enforcement action would occur. So most likely, you know, it's gonna come through an animal control officer to begin with, or animal welfare officer, if you wish, to work hand in hand, because as we mentioned, police officer knows what the law says, both city code and state law, but it isn't necessarily versed in the intricacies of potential situations that, you know.
They don't always know
That it-
exactly what they're looking at,
Yeah.
like is the animal truly emaciated or not, they haven't been trained in that level, they know that starvation is a crime, or that an animal being emaciated can be considered a crime, but what does that look like, how is that scored? What are the steps to make sure that the animal is declared healthy and not in a medical, have a medical problem that is leading to its poor condition, like all of these pieces that an experienced animal control officer that has gone to the academy and had this training and has access to veterinarian input needs to be in order to help the officer have a strong case to support. So all of that is something that we are absolutely engaged in training to do. And that any trained animal control officer could do, depending on what department it was funded through. It's all of the other pieces, I think, that really lead it, lead us to think that by us having it in our control, we have a better full circle scope on the more day-to-day operations. Obviously, we think about these first three bullets as a majority of the calls, but they're not. A majority of the calls are not quarantine neglect, thank goodness. They are not by quarantine calls, thank goodness. A majority of the calls are simple public education calls. Simple calls where people need to be maybe given a barking log or communicated about what options they have to help diminish their neighbor's dogs barking, or communicate with their neighbors, or diminish their own personal dogs barking, or access to resources for spay-neuter services, access to resources for behavioral training or boarding or whatever, maybe like a census for Fido for stray dogs frequently at large, or other programs and organizations that offer these assistance. That we really make sure that our internal staff are well-versed at how to get the people help and point them in the right resources and hold their hand. Just like more like a social worker type aspect. And those are things that we really think are really important to making sure that you're not just going out and writing the same ticket for the same infraction over and over and over again. And then ultimately forcing that person to consider surrendering that animal or dumping that animal, and then it ended up in the system when it had a loving home that just couldn't afford to keep up on the tickets or didn't know how else to service their animal. And then obviously licensing and ordinance enforcement is important. Again, that's as Mark said, that animal welfare officer term, that's kind of where that kind of term comes into place, is where you can be more engaging in these aspects instead of making it feel more like a license is you're being punished by having to have your dog license or for not having your dog license, that this is more of a way that you are supporting this wonderful program that your community has that you can be proud of. This robust dog volunteer walking program, foster program, adoption program, and this animal welfare officer who is coming out and engaging with the community and supporting the community. And that's what your license is more or less going towards, or and have feel more of a feel good piece to it. And that's why sometimes just the simple change of that name, simple change of how the officer is dressed, how the vehicle the officer drives, and how they're coming to present and talk to you can really help get the community more involved and on board with things that can feel a little bit not fun like licensing. And then after hours support. With being available and working strongly with our PD that if they do have an emergency and after hours, could be like a door code, pin pad, shelter or something to that effect, so that we are working strongly together and having that phone number for them to call if they need to ask questions. Community services, again, I like to always go back to the community because I do really feel like stronger and more informed we make our community members, the less dogs that we're going to be taking into care in the end. So on-site adoption events, online promotions, increased visibility and outreach to promote shelter dogs and encourage lifelong matches. Some of these programs can be, dogs in the library, dogs, again, all of these programs are very resource intensive as far as program staffing, volunteers, and liability. Free low-cost vaccination microchip days. This was kind of an idea I had that I think is a great way to bring the community involved. If your pet is licensed, get a free microchip, get a free rabies vaccine. Things like that. Because we are a nonprofit, we are able to work with our local businesses and things to help promote these days, have sponsorships for these days. We have a lot more visibility in that area than the city does as far as funding outreach programs like this. Community education, again, that goes everywhere. That is our open shelter hours where the community can just come in and have consistent staff to engage with and ask questions with. That is our animal welfare officer who's out in the community providing those education services, as well as having more of the community involved in the shelter through these volunteer programs and initiatives that will just be more community members out there knowing more about what the shelter does and how the shelter performs its duties. And then transparent reporting and communication. There is a lot of really, really great CRM software out there that we are utilizing to make sure that this data is digitalized and right there at our fingertips. Anytime we are intaking an animal, we are not just doing it on pen and paper. We are intaking it into our computer database that is automatically publishing it as, so if we intake a stray, it's automatically on our website, on our stray page, it's automatically on Petco Love Lost Found. Automatically, we don't have to do anything, just auto integrate, these systems are auto integrated. And the intake process has a lot of these questions that are very customizable to help us make sure that we have all the reporting purposes for you, which is what jurisdiction was the animal found in? What street was it found in? What were the notes of who was found? Was it found by with a record of that person, and have they brought in other animals? Did they fill out a surrender application last week for this animal and now we're bringing it in as a stray? These are all things that having the system, having all of this data in a computer system helps us identify and manage the data a lot more cleanly, and then in turn report that data to all of you in a much more organized and consistent fashion.
Catch up here, Mark.
How this improves life for dogs and city residents. I feel like a lot of this is, I've kind of already touched on, but for the dogs, our main goal is to reduce that length of stay. And for some dogs, that can be difficult. I'm not gonna lie and say that some dogs easily are adoptable. There are certain breeds mixes that are going to sit in the shelter longer. But what that looks like with having a larger program structure is we have more options for them. We can get them into foster care. We have transfer coordinators that can transfer them out to other organizations, other jurisdictions where maybe that breed goes more quickly through their shelter than it does in our area. As well as our social media, our social media following, like I said, all of these different things we have where the animals are posted immediately. And so reducing the length of stay is the biggest part. That's also medical care is really important. Making sure that any animal that needs medical care is receiving that medical care as quickly as possible. And that by having it done internally, we are drastically reducing the cost, which gives us a much larger scope of options in medical care to be able to provide a medical service that we can just add on to at time of surgery, neuter or something, for little to no additional cost, maybe a little increase in anesthesia time, maybe a little more suture. It could be something that could cost the city at a general practice hospital $2,000 or an emergency visit.
Which we've experienced a number of times over the past year in the couple $1,000s per animal.
Yeah, there is.
Recently, an animal climbed the fence, right,
There
and
is,
injured
right.
itself, and I suppose $1,000 just to get the diagnostics done. That wasn't even surgery. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the reality.
Yeah, and we are limited in somewhat of our scope, but for the limitations that we have far more availability. And like I said, it really expands the level of care we are able to provide medically, because the financial burdens aren't there. And then faster reunification. This is another thing that I hold dear to my heart and that HSMC strongly believes in, which is keeping animals in homes. Doing everything we can to make that reunification happen if we can. Making sure that the animal is immediately posted, like I said, on Petco Love Lost. Make sure that the animal is immediately posted on our website, but also, posting it on our social media. Making sure that the community knows what to do, where to look, and how to be reunited with their lost pet. Is something that's really important, and those things, it is really important to HSMC that we are also offering those things bilingually, because that is something that we have seen a lot in the welfare community, is that not everyone knows where to go to find their pets. And that information needs to be accessible to everyone in multiple languages.
Do you offer like any training services? So if somebody brings a dog, and says, I love this dog to death, but it keeps peeing in my house. Can you just take it? And do you like say, hey, well, let's work with you and maybe we can solve that problem with the dog instead of them surrendering their dog, maybe you help them keep the dog.
Our number one goal is to always help owners keep the dog. We want surrender to be the last option. Sometimes it's just a conversation. Sometimes people just need to be heard and feel as if they know that they're not giving up on the dog, that their frustrations are valid, and that there are other options out there. Sometimes the options are really simple and people are just so frustrated that they couldn't see what was right in front of them, some options that were right in front of them. Others are the resource lists, like I spoke about. We are constantly engaging with our other animal welfare partners to make sure that our resource lists are as much up to date as possible with what's available out there. There is organizations, that specifically offer low-cost training initiatives, free classes, free online courses, YouTube channels, all sorts of things. And we try to really make sure that we are as up to date as possible what is out there. And a lot of that comes through too with us trying to train our fosters. Training our fosters is like training owners. We're having to work through their issues and then they're telling us, oh, I watched this video. And a lot of that engagement is really helping us too with helping the owners. And not all owners are surrendering because of behavior issues. We also get owners who are choosing to surrender their pet because the medical costs. And we do everything we can to either find funding to make those medical costs free of charge for them, or sometimes it's just as simple as providing the service for them and charging them on a reduced rate. I mean, you had a German Shepherd come in from Allen on Friday that needed emergency surgery, that they literally left the ER because it was $5,000 and came to our clinic and we charged them like $280. He was more than happy to pay $280 in comparison to the $5,000. But there are some cases where that services do need to be offered for free, or that they are more long-term than that as well. So reunification, behavior support and enrichment. And then Shelton residents, so yeah, so some of that goes into that too, is giving them more options than just surrendering. That's that education piece and information piece. A faster, more reliable response to animal control and public safety concerns. I think that this is just something that would happen with us having a full-time employee dedicated to these services, as well as additional trained staff that they're working consistently with. Improved public safety around loose and aggressive dogs, again, that comes with that animal control officer position. And then help for residents who find strays and have animals in crisis. Again, like I said, sometimes we can be able to provide those medical services internally if they are in crisis. We do also have some additional programming, such as like our ASN program. We have a program called Animal Safety Network, where we provide temporary boarding for individuals who are undergoing housing crisis, or if they are undergoing a medical crisis and they're going to be hospitalized and they need temporary boarding for their pet until they get out of the hospital. Our Animal Safety Network provides a level of service for those types of individuals as well. And then just simply having staff to provide open hours. Am I correct that the shelter's only open by appointment only right now?
Essentially.
Yeah. With staff being pulled in so many directions, it's hard to establish open community hours. And it's maybe not even always worth the staff's time, with the community not really understanding what the shelter is, what services it can provide, and why they might want to just go down there and chat with the front desk, you know, and ask a question or raise a concern that they have. So we will be able to have that community engagement piece with a phone line or an in-person interaction. And then positive community engagement opportunities, like I talked about, the vaccine clinics, microchip clinics, also just having more knowledge and access and information to the services that we are already providing down at home. So knowing that those services exist and how they get their animals or themselves support through those services. For the city government, for you guys. A trusted partner. I think that I would think that you guys are probably a bit tired of talking about this all the time. Like Eric said, it's something that has been talked about the whole 8 years you've been here. So we can be that trusted partner to just make sure that we are giving you the information about the services that we are providing, when we are providing it, on whatever cadence we decide that you guys need these updated numbers, and know that there's not a lot more going into the infrastructure of the city as far as trading opportunities and all of those pieces. I'm sure Jason's gonna miss. So that's something that we will be providing. And then, and so that's, yeah, that relief from hiring, training, supervising shelter staff. And then, assurance that all work is done to legal and national standards. Like I said, we are very familiar with ASB guidelines. We have experienced shelter veterinary staff, as well as myself, who is very experienced and informed about what the standards of care and the legal requirements of the animal sheltering services are. So this is a little bit of the breakdown of the financial snapshot. So we're gonna work through what the budget snapshot looks like, just to make sure that you guys have a kind of idea of what these things are covered. So the covered positions that would be down here at the shelter would be an animal care manager, an animal welfare officer, shelter services assistant are what we kind of call our intake and outcome kind of floating positions, so they're really well versed in how to communicate with an owner surrender and also how to communicate with a potential adopter. And then our ACTs, so those are our just animal care staff, as well as and then what this funds is all the pieces that those people would then be providing. Our HSMC organizational support, so this is what we already have that then would be supportive of this secondary location. So myself, the executive director, we have a finance manager that would be working closely with the city on the contract processes. And our licensed veterinary staff, our adoption and marketing support. Follow our Facebook, what we do. But it's pretty robust. We try really hard to be sure that we are not only updating our social media, but sending our constituents routine emails and information. And then administrative and volunteers. From our already robust volunteer network. And then so that was the personnel piece of the budget. Second piece of the budget, facility and occupancy, we will take on the responsibilities of those things, of the utilities, the insurance, maintenance and repairs, and we will add a security system. We feel very strongly about a security system. Animal care costs. We will take on the costs of incorporated into the budget are the vaccines and boosters, parasite prevention, medications, dog needs to be on antibiotics, things like that. Of course, dog food and treats. We do have some partnership contracts that help make this line in the budget very small for that piece. These things that we already have established. And our cleaning and sanitation items, training and enrichment. That's all in that. Other operating expenses, software fees, promotional costs, staff uniforms, training, vehicle fuel. These are just some of those pieces that are more operational to kind of help explain what that line item looks like. What we anticipate, we do project intake of about 140 annual intakes, and that and with approximately 50 of those being successful the claims of dogs being reunited with their owners. That is what helps figure out those other pieces, the animal care pieces and staffing of the number of the revenue offsets, sorry. I'm getting tired. Revenue offsets is what then will be bringing money back. So the revenue is, adoption fees, owner returns, licensing. Startup costs, we do think that there are a couple significant upgrades that should be completed to the shelter. And that being the guillotine doors that talked about for safety, kennel covers to prevent dogs from ever escaping and being in the kennel with another dog. And a rescue, which is the solution that we use to clean the kennels, a spray system, so that way you're not squirt bottle. It's actually attached to the hose and comes out in a foam to make sure that disease transmission is minimalized as much as possible. And then those are the things that are in the budget, and then additional improvements that HSMC will fund either ourselves or through volunteer work parties, other fundraising initiatives, or other additional things. So here's a breakdown of what this kind of looks like. Cats are not included in this as the city of Shelton Shelter does not have an adequate way to safely house cats. So,
You okay? You got it. Yeah, covers the positions.
So total operating expenses, we anticipate being, over 300,000 a year. And with the revenue being very little. And we would like to propose a partnership into this, as we know that this is a very cost burdensome for the city at a 70% partnership. Coming in at the city of Shelton. Services. And then the startup costs like we spoke about.
Does that increase with more animals?
There. This is already a pretty heavy
Yeah.
number.
Yeah.
It's definitely not conservative. So I think that we'll be fine on that aspect as it grows. The city of the shelter can only physically manage so many intakes annually. Just based on its size, so I don't see that increasing.
What about liability if one of your staff is bit by a dog on our property?
That's on your insurance.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah,
our
that
insurance
would still
covered.
be, even though it's on
So
city
there would
property.
be a separate, so does city of Shelton lease?
Essentially a leasing of the facility.
So it'd be two separate contracts, we would be leasing the building and then providing the services on separate contracts, that way. We are then liable.
And
for it.
one thing, like, I don't know if we mentioned. I might have mentioned, this isn't a reinvention of the wheel, this wheel has been. Made several times in Kitsap County, as a matter of fact, Kitsap Humane offers services for the city of Bremerton, Port Orchard. And
Bainbridge.
Bainbridge, yeah,
The base banger.
a big banger number, so, luckily enough. There's some models in this area, that are being utilized to better inform, better talk about the services that could be provided.
So you list our partnership at 70%. Is that something that's going to increase over time, or will it remain at 70%?
We do not have it scheduled to.
Will there be a contract? Like, how long would it be?
Yes.
Yeah. That is-
There will be a contract.
Right.
Yes.
I guess my question was, because like we have a contract with Mason County Garbage and then it expires. What would you foresee the contract length be?
We want to show our commitment. I think that starting with a 3-year contract would be a good starting point. With obviously, some room for changes to happen
Yeah, I think
annually.
there's some opening periods during the year where we could re-examine the services provided based on the metrics, right? And the information that's provided, which would be much more robust than what we can provide, and see what, how we're reacting, how we're providing that service to the community. So potentially we can ask for a greater level service or reduce level service based on what we're hearing back from our community.
Would more fees bring down the 202? If people were to be more licensing and more adoptions, would that bring the 202 down, or is that a hard number?
Our licensing fee is what, $15 right now? Jason?
No, I meant if there's another $30,000 in revenue. Does that bring the 202?
No, understood, but you'd have to license a heck of a lot of dogs to
Well,
really drop it,
That
right?
adoption fee.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, potentially. I mean,
And there would be still a lot of pieces to work out in contract.
Yeah.
Of exactly.
Yeah.
Where these are running.
there's obviously, when they have veterinarians on staff, you probably can't keep them at the same salary over a 3-year period of time. That's a reasonable assumption, right? So we'd have to really discuss what that looks like long term. If they're gonna maintain a trained, dedicated staff, there's a commitment that HSMC is making to that, and obviously that's passed on to the member entities.
If you had to guess on services that we're providing compared to what they're offering, what percentage would you call that? I mean, they're offering and what we're
I mean,
doing.
this is a much more robust program. It's
Yeah.
it's hard to say because you saw some of our stats and we didn't have some stats for certain periods of time. Our staff don't receive the training that Humane Society is provided. Certainly veterinary services are probably the biggest cost savings, or benefit. And then the animal welfare officer that we're not providing at all right now.
My thinking was that we're getting more for less. It's kind of where I was going, and that's why I want to know what percentage that you thought it was.
Yeah, I don't know about a percentage, but those are the kind of the highlights that, that aren't being serviced right now.
More like the wraparound services the police and fire department are going for, in dealing with some of the social issues we have. I mean, that's what it sounds like to me when I heard her describe the holistic approach to, animals and their owners. I like the whole leash. We don't address bell pens and the leash very often.
Well, I love this proposal. I hope we can do it for 4 years, so we don't have to do this again in council. We're getting more services with a huge network at a lower cost and a partnership at 70%. And we get to take away a lot of the labor that's involved with the PD and the code enforcement. And then Mesa County or Thurston County Joint Services has like a high kill rate. Adopt a Pet has a no kill, but they're not available. And you know what? Humane Society has this great reputation, and they're the only ones here at the table offering us this great offer. And I think that we should post haste get a contract and then extend it for as long as we can, because it's going to save us money than what we're currently budgeting. So I think this is a win-win for the dogs, win for the city, win for the county, win for the labor involved, win for the police department, win for code enforcement. I think we should do this and do this right away. And if as quickly as Mark and Jason could put together a contract, that's how I feel about it. And I'd like to hear what else I had to talk about.
I have a few more questions.
Yeah.
All right, so as you have mentioned that we don't have a lot of space, what happens if we have more dogs than we have space for? But if you have room in Belfair, would you perhaps transport, or do you just say, sorry, we have no more room?
So utilizing foster programs, transfer programs is a big piece of that. But yes, it would not be considered to use animal care lingo, an open admission shelter. It would be managed intake, meaning we would be working with the community to make sure that we are not just saying yes to every dog that comes to the door and then overburdening ourselves. That there would be a management process to it. People filling out surrender applications, going through proper processes and channels to do everything in the best of our power to make sure that we do not have a capacity issue.
Right.
Like I said, some of the education and training that
Right.
assures that maybe an individual is more comfortable taking that dog back home rather than surrendering it.
Right.
And those types of programs, but
And
you
that
don't have
doesn't even go
a,
as far as strays.
you don't have a shelter in Belleville.
Correct,
yeah.
not for dogs.
Oh, okay, I didn't understand
Yeah.
that part.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Our shelter in Belfair is our clinic and it's for pets.
Oh, okay.
So all of our dogs currently, which our annual intake for dogs right now is about 350 dogs annually, are all housed in foster care
Oh,
and adopted out from foster
wow,
care.
okay, thank you for that information. And then, so I noticed, what was it, like 5 staffing people or something like that you proposed for here?
Yeah,
Okay, do you already have those people, or would they be new hires from this area?
they would be new hires.
And then-
I'd say, yeah, my staff in Belfair
Okay.
is pretty
Okay.
much down there.
And then there's a part B to that, is some of our staff, at our shelter now, would they be eligible to apply for that? Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Because, one of them you mentioned before, I think she's fantastic, and I would hate to lose her. Let's see what else. And this would free up our officers a little bit. This is more for Mark, you think? Yeah.
Officers and code enforcement.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I feel like they're overly burdened. If we could take a little off their plate so that they could handle the other things that they have going on, I think that is fantastic. I think that's a win right there. And kind of playing off of what Miguel had mentioned, if we were to say yes, and I'm not saying that, I don't know what anybody else feels, how soon would this potentially be able to kick off?
We have a couple different ideas of like some maybe phased approaches. You know, this is a big step for us as well. We currently have 10 staff, so
Right.
this is, you know, 50% increase in staffing.
Yeah.
So while we are fully ready to take it over, we wanna make sure that we're doing it responsibly and making sure that there's not a huge gap in services for the community members. So, we are ready to.
Yeah, I think Catherine said it, right? This is a progressive transition, if you will. It's probably not turn the lights off and, you know, maybe they show up the next day to turn the lights on. We have animals in care that we remain in care. They have recruitment of new employees. They have animal welfare officer that is probably the most difficult to recruit, maybe. I mean, maybe I'm mistaken, but in our experience, that's been a little more difficult to recruit than the shelter positions. And so we have to weigh what kind of services would transition at what point based on the staffing that HSSC.
So there wouldn't be a.
Process, because we're gonna wanna make sure that the staffing is being trained at our Belfair location by that staff to make sure that we have a really cohesive team. Cause it will be a team, even though they're working at different
I
locations.
think with, you know, with some direction from council tonight, we can work more specifically and get you some timelines. Certainly a contract would have to come back, but we can get you a timeline that we could demonstrate how that transition may take place that, you know, that we haven't worked on to this point.
And I guess this question is more for you, Mark. I forgot to write down, what are we spending on services right now for our shelter?
We're projected to spend just over 258,000 this year.
Okay.
So I have to ask, it was mentioned no kill shelter. What is your policy on euthanizing animals?
So we currently maintain a 97% no-kill status, so we are considered a no-kill shelter. No-kill is a term that is identified by animal shelter services welfare organizations to be 90% or greater. So we have maintained a no-kill status the entire time we've been in operations. We have very limited reasons that euthanasia is ever considered, extreme medical cases and extreme behavior cases.
Okay, thank you.
I'll follow up a little bit on that. We do have a code section, reclaiming procedure and failure to reclaim that isn't been practiced at the city of Shelton. But I'll read it verbatim here. The reclaim period, legal owners and persons authorized by legal owners may redeem impounded dogs and cats within 3 business days from the date the city notifies the owner the animal has been impounded. And then disposition, so after adoption or requirements for reclaiming, adoption, disposition. Within the discretion of the city, if the dog or cat is not reclaimed by the owner within 3 business days and a reasonably prompt adoption is not arranged, the dog or cat may be transferred to a registered nonprofit animal welfare organization if the animal is suitable for adoption or else euthanized by a licensed veterinarian.
Thank you for following up with that.
Yeah. So certainly there's some, based on the council's preferences, there's some edits to that code, certainly with cats, but also potentially with that euthanasia language.
I would agree that the best term I heard was this is a win. This is a win for the dogs. This is a win for the city. I'm excited. I mean, I never guessed that we would be talking about it. You know, a $56,000 savings right off the bat. So I'm excited. I'm also I think a 3-year contract is probably somewhere I'd like to go as well. But obviously CPI and all that good stuff, that's your guys' stuff to work out, but I think this is a win-win. I don't think we would ever be able to maintain those kind of services in-house, over the next several years. Maybe there may be a time in 10 years or down the road that we could do something like this, but we're nowhere close to that. right
That
now.
model's going away, sorry to interrupt, but that model, as we see in Kitsap and Thurston County, that model for a single jurisdiction to provide these services is gone, frankly. You know, unless you're a really large, municipality, but we've seen it in Thurston County, Bakota and Yelm and even Joint Base Lewis McCord contracts with Joint Animal Services over there.
And it seems to be the nature of things. I mean, it's just getting more, liability gets fleshed out more. The, responsible ways to manage are being refined every year, I'm sure. And, like we said, the shelter was built at a different time when the quality control, I guess, or the quality care was much different. It was doggy jail in a sense. That's what you did with them till they got picked up or adopted out.
I was excited for this conversation today, very well, I'm happy to see where this goes.
Melissa?
Good with it.
Forward to seeing where this goes.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you so much for bringing all this information, all that. But I know this was a lot to ask you to do. So first of all, thank you for standing up because we've been looking for help for years.
Yeah.
And thank you for showing up because we needed some guidance. I was looking for the flaw. I can't find it.
Appreciate that too. I love some solid constructive criticism, so.
Another thing is in the future, should we want to have a capital project to expand, it's much better if we had the whole network of the Humane Society rather than just the city. So we can have a private-public partnership to raise funds for capital projects for a larger facility in the future when we do grow and add more rooftops. This is the best way to go in the future, is having that collaboration and that community buy-in. So I want to echo what our deputy mayor said. Thank you for bringing us a solution that we can all agree upon. So thank you.
I think that's a very good point. We have to keep that on our radar. The existing shelter is not a
Yeah.
long-term viable facility without essentially a scrape and rebuild, right? I mean, we heard how
There's not
many,
really room to expand
Yeah.
there.
yeah.
So down the road, if this was a program that was gonna work forever and the city had some property, would you be able to fundraise to build a shelter?
Well, we already are working on that privately because, with or without this contract, we are a nonprofit organization here servicing Mason County residents. I mean, this is helping us do it in a more structured way, in a way that we have already been providing support.
Mhm.
In lots of ways, we provide the spay neuter services for the city of Shelton dogs. We provide a lot of
Well, there's some medication, right?
Medication.
And reduced costs on medications and consultation,
we send
training.
guys The parvo test.
Yeah.
the Parvo test the dogs, those kinds of things you can just want Amazon and buy. You have to have it's called veterinary of record to be able to buy those things from a medical supply.
Right.
And you have to set up lots of things, you can't just buy those things. So we sell them to you guys so that you guys have the access to those things, as well as a lot of just when there's a question or an animal that comes in with a medical need, we had a puppy come in with a broken leg that we took and things that are just outside of the scope of what you're able to offer right now. We try to always be there with that, and we're not gonna stop. We're not, this contract didn't happen. We are still here to support Mason County residents regardless of that. The work that we're already doing. We just would like to do it more structured and be helping the dogs at the shelter be networked more and having forever homes. And this helps us grow.
So I imagine with the first year savings, we'll probably use that difference to do the upgrades to the kennel.
Well, you saw that was included, so there were some immediate upgrades
Oh, was it?
that they're requesting. Sorry, I took that. It was just.
No, I'm
over-
talking about the upgrades, like the.
Yeah. Yeah, the guillotine door, that was included in the proposal,
Oh.
and actually. Catherine had a contractor come in and look at the costs for that. So we have some more firm costs and what it would really take to retrofit that. We can get some more costs specifically on the fencing, and we would have that at the time we bring something for the council to consider.
Okay.
I'm also really excited that you are part of Mason County already, because I've had a lot of people come up to me and say, are you going out of county? I'm like, I don't know. So some people are really concerned about that. So this is exciting for those people who have those concerns.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Mason County resident myself, but while I've only lived in Mason County for 10 years, I didn't grow up here. I feel very attached to this community and to the successful future of animal welfare as it grows, because it's been fairly non-existent for a long time. And I think that there is a ton of potential with the population growing and diversifying, that we can provide a better service to the animals that live here.
All right.
I would just like to say, just to echo what was already said, I really do appreciate your detailed presentation, and your program sounds like it fills in a lot of the gaps, and it sounds like it will help our city a lot. So I'm really excited about this. So I'm looking forward to moving forward.
Anything else?
At all on this or anything else? I just kind of want to talk about the
No,
storm a little
just
bit.
this.
Okay.
Okay.
We're good. So just, all right, council, new item for discussion. The manager. new item.
Just a couple of things. We got through yesterday's storm fairly well. We have a storm conveyance under Olympic Highway North or Olympic Highway South, sorry, Highway 3. That comes off Pioneer Way under Highway 3 into the state right of way. And it's two 36-inch culverts that combine into a box drain or box culvert, and then goes into a 24-inch for some reason. Doesn't make sense, right? Two 36-inch
To a
pipes being
24.
necked down to a 24-inch.
Pressure.
That got clogged yesterday. It started eroding. The crews put some Corey's Falls and everything. It held on. They have some more work to do now. They cleared it out today when it quit raining. They're monitoring it. You might have seen the crews in last night. We had some overtime. We had some overtime at the treatment plants too. When we get that heavy rainfall, we bring staff in to monitor and be there for any adjustments they need to make. So frankly, I think we weathered it quite well. Didn't mean to say
No.
weather. I did not mean that.
Hey, it worked.
But we're keeping an eye on it. You know, I saw Goldsboro running really high this morning. We've got, we still have some high tides early in the day, and more rain coming our way, another couple inches this week at least. So we're gonna continue monitoring. We went and got more sandbags. And so those are available down at the shop. They're available right near the animal shelter. Somebody can pick them up, drive down and grab them as they see fit. So they can hopefully utilize those for their structures. So I'll keep you updated if anything changes from there. We're working with WashDOT too, because that's within their right of way. We're hoping they take some responsibility over that, but it doesn't collect a lot of stormwater off of the highway. A lot of it comes from the other side of the highway off Pioneer Way and down a ditch line. But we'll continue working with them and make sure that we have some restoration to do actually on Crossroads property. We're lucky that storm pond was there because it entered into that storm pond rather than going down through a property into a structure or through a street or someplace else. So actually that storm pond caught it after it was overflowing, but it eroded pretty significantly. We have some fence repairs to do and some other things there. So we'll continue.
Yeah,
watch
up the
that.
hill.
Yeah.
I seen they were over there working this morning. I was like, oh boy.
Yeah. Always exciting.
Thank you.
Question for Mark?
No.
All right, again, our next meeting is the 16th of December, and we have a presentation from the Historical Society, financial report from our wonderful Terry Schnitzer. And our action agenda was everything we did last week, which was a budget supplemental, a Shelton Employees Guild contract, extension on our on-call building services, full contract for Safe Built LLC, extension on-call building service full contract with Clarity Consulting Engineering, TLLC, and a resolution for the TMBHO ASO contract for system and care coordinator.
Mr. Mayor, I will mention that was not on your business agenda on the second. That is the second piece of the mobile integrated health program. So the systems care coordinator that TMBHO, there's a Mason Behavioral Health Organization would hire, so this is a contract with them, so they can go out and hire that position. So as the council approved, kind of on a one and done with North Mason Regional Fire Authority's contract, I thought the council would also consider a one and done on that position as well, and I know North Mason Regional Fire was conducting some interviews with that peer support specialist over the last week, so we hope to have that filled and in the field here before long. Were those not in the business? I'm sorry, I'll follow up. So we want the Clarity Consulting and the BHC Consulting. Safe Belt, sorry, are extensions of their contracts. They had 2-year contracts with 1-year extensions, so we're asking for the 1-year extension so we continue that consultant work to keep building permits moving. We may have some good news here on building official front that would reduce our costs to those services, but we still want to keep them there for, you know, the either large commercial projects or just maintaining a redundancy if we need some.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Anything else from Art? All right, this session is adjourned at 7:43 PM.
Awesome.
Oh.
I was waiting for your idea of putting another code enforcement that I saw in places and how
Yeah.
they're offering that, but we can't compare that.
Well, I was